Make sure that our YouTube kicks in here.
I think it's live. Yeah.
I think it is. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Chaz and Friends. I am honored to be joined by Dr. Philip Chase, whose channel is Philip Chase, and also known as Dr. Fantasy.
Yes. Yes. Well, Jazz, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I think there's nothing better than getting together with friends and talking about the books we love and whatever else comes up, because this could be a broad-ranging discussion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think it'll be a great discussion. There's a lot that's liable to come up, so if you want to give an introduction about your channel to any of my viewers that may not be familiar with you, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. Happy to. So I started a channel a little over 2 years ago, thinking that there must be no one else out there doing a YouTube channel about fantasy. And of course, I could not have been more wrong, but I also could not have been more fortunate in that decision, because I found myself part of a really wonderful community. And my background is that I am a college professor who I had developed a course on fantasy. And so one of the motives I had for starting the channel was actually to supplement my fantasy novels course. So to just have another place to keep the dialogue going and talk to people who love fantasy. That's really what I wanted to do. And I had this sort of a little bit silly thing about the best of fantasy, because I'm on this quest to find the best fantasy out there. So it's a never-ending quest, however, which is a good thing. Most quests, I think, that are really awesome are never-ending, right? So
yeah. Oh yeah, yep, absolutely.
So yeah, that's really what motivated me to get into this, and I'm so glad I did, because it's you find all kinds of great people out there to talk with about the books we love. So yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
I agree. That's excellent. Harfoot is here with us. Hello, hello.
Hello,
Welcome.
Harfoot. Good to see you here.
Yeah.
Got a couple of our Hobbit types covered there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for those of you who have watched my live streams before, I'm going to do my best to get to all of your comments. If I miss a few, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. And I know all of you want to show your love to Dr. Philip Chase here. Yeah, hello from Joanna.
Hello, Joanna. So nice to see you. Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, glad you could stop by, and we understand about being busy, don't we?
Yes, yeah, we all have jobs and lives and all of that, so that's perfectly understandable. The great thing is this stays up on YouTube, so people can catch it, of course, later on. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Fina's
And
here from
there's
Fina Reads. That's
Fina.
awesome.
Hello, Fina. Good to see you.
Philip is the real deal. Such a kind and lovely person. I agree, Joanna. He really is.
Well, I mean, it's interesting coming from Joanna, because I think of her as one of the kindest persons that I've met on BookTube or elsewhere, really. So.
Oh yeah, she is. She's really something. Fina is too. Ben is as well.
There's Ben. Yeah, all
Ben
kinds
from
of great
Literature and
people out
Mo-Fi.
here.
Yeah, got a lot of dogs in life. Yep, dogs in life. Well, for me,
Yep.
it's cats in life, but
Cats are great too.
we may get a visit from my cat at some point. You never know.
Oh, well, your cat is most welcome to stop by.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah, I've been really excited to have you on the channel. You're one of those guys you're fairly new to BookTube. You've been about 1.5 years now, right?
Well, no,
On
just over
BookTube?
2 years. Yeah,
Just over 2 years. That's
yeah,
right. Yeah.
February of 2020 was when I started. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. Yeah. Well, well, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben, and coming again from an amazing booktuber himself. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, Ben's fantastic. Yeah, so a little over 2 years, and you've just had explosive growth. Uh,
Well, I mean, I don't really have a good sense of how these things work, or are the average sort of thing, or I feel like I'm delighted just to be part of the community, frankly, and it's
Absolutely.
just great to meet all these wonderful people. And if people enjoy the content, I'm thrilled. I think there are certainly channels that have gotten big a lot faster, a lot bigger than mine. For example, most recently, Man Carrying Thing just absolutely exploded. I mean, that's explosive growth, I think, right? Yeah.
Oh, I haven't noticed that. I'm gonna have to go look. I do watch some of his videos, but I haven't seen that,
Oh
so I'll
yeah,
have
he
to.
just blew up big time. So I think people love that kind of content. But also,
Yeah.
there are plenty of folks out there who like these longer form discussions that we do, and so
Hmm.
that's the great thing about YouTube/BookTube is there's something out there for everybody, really. So it's
Absolutely, there is. And
fantastic.
Men Carrying Thing, he's got some. I like he's got some great humor.
Oh, he's so good at what he does.
Yeah, he
So
really is.
he absolutely deserves that growth because obviously people love what he's doing. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's great. But yeah, whether or not, honestly, I think whether or not how big a channel grows is not the most important thing, in my opinion.
exactly,
I think
exactly.
if you find people who are, part of your tribe, who are your people that you enjoy interacting with, and that you have these wonderful exchanges with, like we're having right now, then I think
Hmm.
that's is the most important thing. That's the beautiful part of this whole thing. And I think it's easy perhaps for us to sometimes get a little too focused on numbers, and
I
that I
agree.
think would take the joy out of the experience. And if you get too focused on the numbers, and it's something that's very easy to fall into, but
Hmm.
I do think that it's important for us to not get fixated on numbers and try to have a more qualitative approach to this whole experience, where we're just I'm grateful every day for every comment that people leave, and the interactions that I have, for getting to watch content on other channels. So that's my focus, and then whatever happens. So
Hmm.
that's kind of how I try to approach it anyway.
Exactly. Same here. That's what I'm here for. It's the relationships I'm building and the interactions, and growth is just icing on the cake, right? It's just
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Uh and some people might say it's the cake because they prefer the icing, right? But
That's true.
I know people that eat cake just for the icing, but I prefer the cake part. So that's
Yeah,
uh yeah, so anything extra is just icing for me. But yeah, it's been great. It's a great community, a very loving community for
yeah,
the most part, and
yep.
it's yeah, you build some really fantastic lasting friendships, and sometimes nemesis, right?
Yeah, you can
You got your nemesis.
yes, you can find a nemesis or two out there on BookTube as well, and mine is a particularly formidable nemesis, I must say. So I have to wear protective tweed all the time. It's really something.
Oh, that's awesome. AP's really great.
Yes, he is.
He
He's
is. I miss the ponytail though. I'm gonna
Yeah.
miss that.
Well, he early on he did refer to it as the COVID ponytail.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It was I think it was difficult to get for a lot of people for a while to get to a hairdresser or a barber, and so I think that was part of the reason why the whole thing started, and it just sort of grew from there, I guess. So
Hmm.
yeah, but it is gone now, and so the ponytail is dead. Long live the ponytail.
Right. Exactly. He looks good though.
Oh yeah,
He looks good. Even without it. So
yeah. We'll accept him. We'll accept Professor Fireballs even without the ponytail, I suppose. So
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's great. Now recently you just had you got a promotion to department chair, if I remember correct.
yeah, so I'm still interim department chair.
Interim. Okay.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and that may or may not, most likely probably will eventually become department chair. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, that's it's interesting. It's a slightly different perspective. I am still teaching, and that's very important to me
Absolutely.
because I consider myself a teacher before anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my whole career. I've been teaching for, I guess really, I mean, at a college or university here in the States, I've been teaching for about 25 years now. So my identity is very much wrapped around that. I think of myself as a teacher, and that's sort of a default mode for me, I guess. But I am now, serving as the interim chairperson of my department, which gives me a slightly different perspective. I still serve students, but not always in the classroom. So it actually involves a lot of troubleshooting and taking care of emergencies and that sort of thing. So it's not as glorious as you might think, Chaz.
I can imagine it wouldn't be any type of administrative role like that comes with its share of foibles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
funny 'cause I never really thought of I had never had the ambition to be an administrator of any sort. That was never what I wanted to do. I enjoyed teaching.
mhm,
But I just circumstances were such that I was probably the person most prepared for the role when the previous chairperson, who was a tremendous, wonderful person, when she retired. I was probably the most obvious choice because it's funny because I joined the department back in 2002, so
okay,
20 years ago. And
yeah,
I was the new guy. I was the young guy, and everybody else who was there had been there for a long time, since the late 60s. Uh,
mhm,
so it was, they were established. They all knew each other, and I was just young new guy back in 20 years ago.
yeah,
Now I'm the old guy, and all those wonderful people have since retired, and there are new people who are younger than I am, and so I find myself suddenly being. It's like it happened overnight. It's really strange. I know it's weird to say that 2 decades could feel like something that happened overnight, but it really
right.
feels that way to me. Like I just sometimes I have to kind of wait. Really, I'm the old guy now. Yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely a change in perspective, right?
yeah,
To Yeah, yeah, it's
yeah.
hard to believe time flies as fast as it does.
Yeah, and of course, it happens to you with your kids too, right? I mean, you
Oh,
look at your
yeah.
kids and wait, weren't you just toddling around, yesterday, and saying funny things and spilling food everywhere? And wait, now you're all grown up. What gives here? So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it does. It flies by so fast as a parent. I look at both of my kids who are now my daughter's almost 17, and my
wow,
son just turned 18 in January. So,
wow.
that's quite surreal, and funny enough, I've had my daughter on the channel a couple of times. She's helped me with a couple of videos. I was inspired by you for that
Oh, is that right? Yeah,
with your daughters. I had wanted to do it, but I wasn't sure, with YouTube and having minors on the channel and stuff like that. But
yeah,
after after I saw yours, I did a little research and I'm like, okay, it's yeah. So I've
yeah.
had her
I
on the
didn't even do
channel
the
a couple
research.
of times.
I didn't even do the research. I just sort of because I was blissfully ignorant. I just did it. So.
Yeah. Well, that's
I guess it's
excellent. I
okay.
love that too.
Yeah,
Yeah, it worked out. Yeah, it's definitely okay. So yeah,
yeah.
you inspired me with that. It was a lot of fun.
Well,
Uh,
cool.
I
And go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. You're good.
Oh, I was just gonna say it is really special to have your loved ones come on the channel and support you in that way. And I just with my daughters, they've read some of the books that I've read and love, and a lot of the books that they read when they were little, especially, were things that we did together.
Hmm.
So that is an important bond, and I think it's something
It
that we all
is.
share. as well. I think it's really, we all get excited when somebody we know on BookTube is reading the same book that we're reading, or we even
Yeah,
have buddy reads and we have discussions, and that's part of the joy of it. And that extends to our family members as well. If they're people who also read some of the things we read. So it just, I think bonding over stories is something that is innate to humanity. This
I think so
we
too.
are the storytelling animal. And so I think that stories are just central to what we are. And so getting together with the people we love to talk about them and enjoy them is, I think, some of the best moments in my life for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, mine too. And you're right. It is really special to have that bond, with our kids and our loved ones. One of the first videos I saw of yours was your review with your daughter for the Broken Earth trilogy.
Oh yes, my older
Uh,
daughter. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and that was really special to watch, and I've had connection with my daughter, especially over several books.
Hmm.
The Martian being one, and
Cool.
she and I are listening to Good Omens right now on Audible,
Oh, neat.
and
Huh. Yeah.
yeah,
I haven't
so
listened to or read that myself yet. Are you liking it?
oh, it's amazing. It's one of my favorite books. This is a reread for me,
Okay.
and I've watched the Good Omens series on Amazon Prime is one of our favorite shows. I've watched it twice now, and my daughter's watched it 3 times. It's one of her favorites.
Wow. Huh.
So I'm now introducing her to the book, and that's just been a lot of fun.
Cool. So that's Pratchett and Gaiman, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've obviously read a couple books by each of them. I love Neil Gaiman's American Gods and The Ocean at the End of the Lane. And I've
Mhm.
read only 3 Discworld books so far, but I will definitely be reading more of those because they're fun. They're a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, they are. Ocean at the End of the Lane is my all-time favorite book.
Oh well,
That
then we should
yeah,
talk about that. Yeah, it's a beautiful little book. It really
it
is.
is. Yeah, it's really special. Just a really neat short book, but
Yeah.
it packs so much into that 200 some pages. So,
Yeah, I mean, it felt like to me while I was reading it and afterwards that I was living in a dream, and
mhm.
it was
Oh yeah.
sometimes a slightly disturbing dream, but but it was very
Yeah.
dreamlike. And there are a few books that I would compare that experience to, like Susanna Clarke's Piranesi, was similar in the effect that it had on me.
Ooh, that's good to know because that's high up on my list to read.
Oh, that's also a beautiful, to me, just a beautiful experience. Piranesi is
Mhm.
such a wonderful read. But yeah, but Ocean at the End of the Lane, I have to reread that because it had a strong effect on me. And mostly, yeah, I mean, it could be disturbing in places, but it was also just in a pleasant way as well, dreamlike. So yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And Fina loves Ocean as well.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's a fan. Um, and I want to touch on something there, but I did notice Drew popped in briefly
Oh,
to
thank you, Drew. Yeah.
give us a like and encourage everybody to sub. Thank you, Drew. Appreciate you. He's a great booktuber as well. One of my good friends.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
For Ocean at the End of the Lane, if you do a reread of it, or I should say, when you do a reread of it, I would highly recommend doing an immersive read if you can get the. I know you don't really do a lot of audiobooks, do you?
I don't do any. I've never done an audiobook. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I would highly recommend if you want your first audiobook to be really special. I
Hmm.
highly recommend Ocean at the End of the Lane. Neil Gaiman reads it himself. He
Mm.
reads most of his books actually for
Yeah.
Audible,
I would enjoy that.
for audio, and
Yeah.
um, it's just a really special experience having Neil read his book to you. He's just got that voice.
He
Uh,
has of course, I think we Americans love a British accent.
oh
So there's
yeah,
that. But he has a good voice too. Yeah.
yeah.
a nice baritone, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. Very
Yeah.
smooth and calming.
I agree. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he would do a great job as a narrator. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
So that's really great. I'm glad you enjoyed it so much. It deeply impacted me too. It's one of those that I feel like I could read every year.
Yeah,
Uh and just enjoy it again and again. So
yeah, and with a lot of, I think, pretty cool insights about coming of age and
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And with Piranesi, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're getting a series of letters, if I'm not mistaken, from Piranesi talking about life and experiences and
So they're journal entries.
or journal entries. Okay, yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Hmm.
a series of journal entries, which is a nice conceit. It's a slightly different narrative framework in that sense, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say that you sort of gradually get to know more about Piranesi through these journal entries.
Oh, and I love that. That just sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very clever book. It's different. It's really different. And just don't go into it thinking you're going to get a conventional plot style book.
Sure.
It's very spare in many respects in terms of there aren't a lot of characters, and there's a very it's a vast but very simple setting. I will just say that much. And Yeah, it's one of these books too where you're not quite sure how to interpret things, whether you could go in a couple different directions,
Uh-huh.
and I think equally valid, uh, without feeling 100% sure like that's quite right.
Yeah.
But in a good way, for me anyway. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. And I like unconventional writing and narrative styles.
Yep.
It suits me just fine. So I'm definitely excited to try it out.
Yeah. Big thumbs up for me. It was one of my favorite books that I read last year. So
Have you read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell?
yes, I have. Yeah. In fact, initially, I thought when I started my channel that I would be reviewing Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell,
Uh-huh.
because I had read it, but I had read it years before starting the channel, and I was deeply impressed by it. And I already
Okay.
considered Susanna Clarke to be a brilliant writer. It's
Oh
very different,
yeah.
by the way. They could be by two different authors, except that
Wow.
they're both very well written. This is very unusual. Most of the time, you read an author, and they're like most of their books, you can tell that's the author, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's like most composers, or musical groups are the same way. You hear the song, oh, that's so and so. You can identify it by their
Right.
themes and by their style and so many other factors. But Susanna Clarke's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is so different from Piranesi. But I mean, just in almost every respect, really, it's interesting. The one is a huge, long book, and it's written in a style that is meant to be reminiscent of the early 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, I think that's right. Or late 18th, early 19th century, somewhere around
Okay.
there. And so yeah, I think like Jane Austen or something.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
with magic, and yeah, so the Napoleonic era, roughly that era, um,
Okay.
and she does imitate that really well. Susanna Clarke does. Piranesi is a totally different style, more stream of consciousness. We talked a second ago about how it's the framework is with these journal entries. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
very different voice, very different voice. But
Yeah.
I think both books, as different as they are fantastic. I love them in their own ways. So yeah, so I'm a fan of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell as well. I have never done a video on it, just because
Yeah.
I need to reread it, and it's a huge book.
Oh, yeah. It
Oh yeah,
seems like one of those that it would probably take me at least a couple of months to read, and I
yeah,
do have it. I plan on reading it eventually, but I've heard good things about it, and equally with Piranesi, everybody just seems to love it. And as we were talking, with the stream of consciousness and everything, it reminded me of the memoirs, letters, if you will, of Marcus Aurelius, kind of that.
Cool. Huh.
Because I've read several. I haven't read the entire thing, but I have the letters of Marcus Aurelius, and it sounds similar in a way. I am, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Have you read Marcus Aurelius?
Yeah, a bit here and there. I'll tell you
Yeah.
what it reminds me of. It reminds me of Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, which
Okay.
is really stream
Ah.
of consciousness. And
Okay. I have
that's
not read that one.
it's such an amazing book. It's not fantasy, but it is a brilliant book that is talk about no plot. I mean, there is no plot at all.
Okay.
And I have never seen an author come as close to conveying what happens inside the human mind
Yeah.
as Virginia Woolf does in Mrs. Dalloway. And the way our minds slip from thought to thought, and the way I just, it's so fascinating to read this book where nothing really happens at all. And you sort of slide from one character's perspective to another, but you get this beautiful sense of not only how the mind works, but also this sense of connection between the characters. It's a fascinating book, Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. It's absolutely brilliant stuff, and that's a book that left me stunned, absolutely stunned. But don't, if you like action and plot and all that, there's a party going on, and it's basically describing the preparation for the party.
Okay.
That's about it. I
Interesting.
mean, yeah.
Yeah. Not much to it. It sounds like.
Oh yeah, and Brush to Canvas says that Piranesi reminded them of Virginia Woolf as well. But The Waves, and The Waves is also a brilliant book. I've read that as well.
Okay.
And that is also very experimental, very stream of consciousness kind of thing. And again, characters blending into one another. Really cool stuff. Really cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, that sounds. I've never read any Virginia Woolf, but I've heard she puts out some great stuff, and glad to have you, Brush to Canvas. Thanks for your input on that.
Yeah, and there's Shad. Hello.
Shad's here as well. Yeah. Yeah. I assume that's how it was pronounced, but thank you for jumping in there first.
I'm winging it too, Chaz. So
okay. I feel bad if I butcher people's names. So
I do too.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard it pronounced, and I'm winging it. So Shad, please correct us if that's incorrect.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad to have you, my friend.
We're glad to have you here. Yeah.
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 Well, that sounds fantastic. In fact, I've been thinking about bumping up Piranesi on my list very soon here, maybe within the next couple of months.
Yeah, it's a quick read too. It's a really quick read.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
And same with Robin Hobb. I keep being told by everyone that you just need to read it, Chaz. You need to read it, and so I might have to bump that one up sooner rather than later as well.
Yeah, well, that's a problem, isn't it? There are so many great writers, and I definitely consider Robin Hobb to be one of the very, very best in our genre. She's just she's got it all, really. But I love her commitment to developing characters. I think there aren't too many people at that level that she's at when it comes to character development, and she does it brilliantly with the characters themselves, but also through the relationships between the characters. So it's really cool how she brings a character alive through that character's interactions with other characters. She's just so wonderful at that. One of the very best.
Well, that's great. I'm a very character-driven reader, and so it sounds like she would definitely be for me. there was one point where I thought to myself that I might not bother picking that series up just because there's so many books to read, but
Well, you know what?
everyone
No,
keeps
there are 16 books, but they're
yeah
separated into all these trilogies. There's one tetralogy, so you don't have to read it all at once. That's what I'm going to do actually this
exactly
year. I'm with AP. Going to be reading Realm of the Elderlings, but we're not going to read it straight through. We're just going to
yeah
take it, do a trilogy, and then move on to something else, and then come back to Realm of the Elderlings and do another trilogy. So it probably will take us 2 years to get through
yeah
the entire thing, or more even, who knows. But we have a lot of exciting plans. We have to finish the 2 Malazan series first, which we're almost
mm-hmm
done with, and then we're going to be picking up some Robin Hobb and some David Gemmell, and one I'm really excited to pick up, Jenny Wirtz. I'm really excited to be reading the Wars of Light and Shadow, which is an
mm-hmm
11 book series. Just finished the 11th book, and I don't think it's out yet, but probably soon. But by the time we get to the 11th book, it'll be out, I'm sure.
okay
But yeah, that's going to be a major feature of my channel once we finish
that's
with Malazan.
great.
Yeah,
That's fantastic. Sounds great, and I'm with you on series that are broken up like Robin Hobb does
yeah,
into trilogies or quadrologies.
yeah.
Um, Shannara does that as well. Terry Brooks does
Huh?
that, and
Yep.
uh, that's what makes Terry Brooks so easy to get through. Well, he's got a great writing style as well. I love his books, but
Okay.
it makes it easier to experience when they're broken up like that, where you can read a trilogy and be done for a while. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
And Jenny
I
Wirtz's Wars of Light and Shadow is also separated into arcs of different lengths. So the first book, I believe, is all by itself, and then the second and third book are also an arc, and then there's one of the arcs is, I think, 5 books long. So I mean, you can
okay,
do it that way too. So yeah,
yeah. Well,
and
that's fantastic.
there's Scott in the chat there
Yeah,
too.
Scott's joined us. I won't be able to stay, but just wanted to drop in and say hello
Yep.
to my favorite book too as well. Thank you so much, Scott,
Thank you,
and
Scott.
hello to
And
you as
also,
well.
he is a big time Hobb fan too. Yep, there we go.
Yes, yeah, he's one of the ones that finally convinced me. Oh, I just need to read Hobb because I watched some of his videos and how much he talked about his love for her writing. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I just got to do it now.
Yeah, he's right. He's absolutely right. And anybody who
Yeah.
says Hobb is their favorite writer of all time is not going to hear any argument from me. So,
That's awesome.
yeah,
Well, Neil Gaiman is mine, but I have no doubt
awesome
that
too.
Robin Hobb might be might eventually become a close second. So that's
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing anyway. We shall see.
Yeah, and Neil
Uh,
Gaiman is brilliant. It's
he
interesting
really
because I have
is.
a kind of a short list of fantasy authors that I consider to be exemplars of great prose, and Robin
Mm,
Hobb is one, and Neil Gaiman is another one.
hmm
So yeah,
Absolutely. Have you read Aaron Morgenstern, The Night
no,
Circus and the Starless Sea?
it's on my radar. I have not yet read it.
They are really brilliant. She's one of my auto by authors. Her prose is extremely accessible and atmospheric. Um,
Hmm,
I just love her books. So
cool.
she's another one. And I have a feeling if you like Neil Gaiman and you like Piranesi, at least from what I've heard you talk about Piranesi, you may enjoy those books quite a bit.
Oh, nice.
So
Yeah, cool.
yeah,
That
yeah.
sounds great.
Ursi's
Oh,
here. So
there's
glad to have
Ursi.
you.
Yeah, great to see you, Ursi.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah.
Um,
So I was
now,
curious, Chaz, about
oh,
Gaiman's American Gods. Um,
yes,
so you said Ocean at the End of the Lane is your favorite, but I want to
yes.
hear your take on American Gods. That's a book that by the way, I taught in my fantasy novels
I remember
course.
you saying that. Yes.
And I
Um,
love American Gods, but I've heard people who are not so big on it. So I just wonder what your opinion is.
I really like American Gods. I don't love it, but it was hard to follow at times for me, and it
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't really blow me away, but it's still one of my, for those who do star ratings, it's still one of mine that's probably up there, a 3.5 or a 4.
Okay.
It's still a great book. It's just not my favorite of Neil Gaiman's books. Now, I have not read Anansi Boys yet. That's one of the ones that I still need to get to.
Right. Okay.
And I liked the Anansi family in American Gods.
Oh goodness, yeah.
So they're just
Piranesi. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm really excited to read more about them. And maybe if I do a reread of American Gods at some point, which I probably will do, I'll enjoy it more.
Yeah, I've read it, I think 5 or 6 times at least. It could be more.
Okay. Oh, that's
And
great.
it's one of those books that the more times you read it, the more you appreciate it. At least that's how it worked for me.
Okay.
And because there's a lot going on in American Gods. It is
Yeah.
a road trip novel. It is a mystery. It is a fantasy. It is, so many things just thrown together with a whole lot of, as you can tell from the title, a lot of Americana, plus a lot of mythology. So
Right.
it's a really interesting book. And for me, it teaches really, really well. And the reason it teaches well is it's got some really good themes incorporated into it, like identity. It's about what is America? What is this
Yeah.
country? And there's this wonderful line in there that this is the only country that continuously wonders what it is, right?
Right.
That's one thing that Wednesday says, whether or not you agree. But it's a really interesting exploration of us, and I think the fact that Gaiman of course, he lived in the United States for a long time, but he is still an outsider in the sense that he's British. So it's a
Right.
kind of cool thing to have this sort of outsider kind of this is his take on American identity, and it's a fascinating book, really cool book. And I actually, a lot of people find the central character to be very flat, but I think there are reasons for that. That if you get into the story, you begin to discover what's behind that, and it makes sense to me. So I don't want to give any spoilers, but I love Shadow. I think he's a pretty brilliantly realized character by the end.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. In fact, Shadow was one of my favorite characters. I've also read the 2 short stories, one in Fragile Things, and there's one in Trigger
Yeah.
Warning as well. And I really enjoyed
Yeah.
those.
The
So
Monarch of the Glen is one of them.
yeah, the Monarch of the Glen. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really great short story, and then the one from Trigger Warning is as well. So I hope to eventually reread it. And Ursi says that there's an annotated edition, which I have seen, which is looks really nice. Leave it to Philip to make
Yeah.
a book sound fantastic. Yes, indeed. Checking Amazon, checking Amazon as he speaks. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing about BookTube. We're never at a loss for books that we need to read.
This
But
is
yeah,
true. Yeah.
I think American Gods. I don't know what it was about the time that I read it, but it just it seemed a little bit all over the place to me, and
Yeah.
so I think if I reread it again, I would appreciate it more probably. Um,
Yeah.
Shortly after that, about a year after that, I read Paternus by Dirk Ashton.
Okay. Cool.
I don't know if you've encountered the Paternus series, but
I've heard of it,
he,
and I've seen Dirk Ashton's on Twitter a fair amount, but I have not yet read his books. But I would like to someday. Yeah.
I've only read the first book, but it was brilliant, I thought, and he does a similar story about gods living in America and things like that.
Oh, cool.
I preferred his take on it to Neil Gaiman's actually, but that's not to say that I don't enjoy Neil Gaiman's book. I still thought it was quite good. So
Yeah. Huh.
yeah. But
Well, that
Dirk
sounds
Ashton's
amazing.
definitely one to check out. If you liked American Gods, I think you would really enjoy Dirk's story. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll get to Paternus someday, I'm sure. And like you said, we've got so many books to get to. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what I'm going to be reading for the rest of this year, pretty much. Although you
Yeah.
never know. Sometimes I tend to be not entirely strict about following my TBR. So sometimes I will, on a whim or on a recommendation, try something different. So yeah, you never know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very much that way. I'm a mood reader. I try to plan a little bit, but usually my mood wins out.
Yeah, you're not a
Luckily, though,
TBR
that
guy.
I'm not really. I've tried to do a blend this year of having a loose TBR with some flexibility in there for my moods, and that's worked pretty well so far. Especially with starting Malazan this year,
Mm-hmm.
which I credit you with, by the way, Dr. Fantasy, for inspiring me to finally get back and read Malazan, because I started Gardens of the Moon about 4 or 5 years ago, or I read it actually. I finished it, but it was a hard read for me, and I didn't go
Mm-hmm.
back to the series even though I planned to. But this time around, on a reread of Gardens of the Moon, it was great. I
Cool.
found my footing, and everything just worked like clockwork. And so now I just completed Dead House Gates. I just barely finished it, and
Nice.
that one
Yeah.
that one was a hard one for me,
Is
just
that
because
right?
it didn't flow nearly as well as Gardens of the Moon for me.
Yeah.
And but I still liked it quite a bit. So
Good.
I tried to leave myself some flexibility and not be too hard on myself if I decide not to continue with Malazan. But
Yeah.
I'm at the point now where I think I'm at least going to read Memories of Ice,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then if I decide to put it down for a while, maybe I will. Um, but we'll see. I I may in fact finish the series this year. Who knows? So
You never know. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. For me, and not everybody experiences a book the same way. So, which is perfectly fine. But it's Malazan, both series really. The Malazan Book of the Fallen and novels of the Malazan Empire by Ian Esselmont, because they co-created this world.
Right.
The experience of reading these has been really just life-changing for me over the last
Right.
year and change. Yeah, it's been really something.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like these there's just so much in these, and I have no issues with anyone who says, yeah, this just I was had a hard time, I was confused or whatever. That comes up a lot, but for me, getting into those books, and I did read them the first time, the Malazan Book of the Fallen, so it's a reread for
Uh-huh.
me,
Yeah.
and I had a lot of questions. And there was so much there that I admired that I knew I was going to need to reread this series. And that was always going to
Mm-hmm.
be one of the major things I wanted to do first on my channel, was to do a Malazan Book of the Fallen reread. And then I ultimately decided to do the novels of the Malazan Empire alongside those. And I'm really lucky that AP joined me in those reads.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
That's been
he's very well versed in Malazan for
Oh,
sure.
he's brilliant in general, but
He
and in
is.
fantasy, he's extremely well versed, and of course, he is an advanced reader for both Stephen Erickson and Ian Esselmont, so he has
Right.
wonderful insights that really just as a reader too, though. So because there are certain things that he can't talk about as an advanced reader, right? He's not
Oh,
allowed
I'm sure.
he never gives like inside type information or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. It's just as purely as a reader and admirer of fantasy.
Right.
But yeah, I would just say that these books to me, and I teach a course at my college called English Classics,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, the Malazan Book of the Fallen, the Malazan books in general, the entire world, these are classics. These are books that, for me, could be read by people of any time and place because of how well they get across the themes, how brilliant they are, how universal they speak to universal human experiences, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
This is great literature. They're just great literature for me. And okay, they're not always the most relaxing or easy read. That's true. And if somebody more or less wants to read to relax, and then yeah, it's not necessarily the first thing you should pick up.
Yeah, it's very heavy at times, very thematically heavy,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it is really brilliant take on the human experience. I
Oh yeah.
agree.
It really rewards rereads too. So I guess somebody who's read the series a few times would say it is relaxing to read because that is something I experienced on my second read as well. Was the first time I read it, I was always going back to the character list and the maps and everything, and it's interrupting my immersion in the story.
Yeah.
And this time it's been very different because I didn't need to do that, and I also forced myself not to do it. So, because I still didn't have everything down pat, there's a lot there. So if I
There
came
is.
across something that was confusing, I would wait to look it up until I was done reading, and
Mhm.
that way I didn't break the immersion. So I had a
That's
it helped me to do it that way because I felt even though I loved the character development to begin with, the second time it was just a lot easier for me to fall in with the characters. So yeah,
I can see that, and that really resonates with my reread of Gardens of the Moon. It was much easier because I'd already kind of experienced a lot of it that first time. So I
yeah,
can see how it's a better series on a reread for sure. Um,
yep.
there were things that I still loved, like for instance, I didn't really love Duiker, or well, maybe it's Diker. I'm not sure if it's Diker
It's
or Duiker.
Duiker. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah, okay,
I think if
but
you the Malazan Wiki has a pronunciation guide that is
uh-huh,
usually helpful, and also
okay.
I'm pretty sure that's how Erickson and Esselmont pronounce it is Duiker. Um,
Okay, yeah, that's how I was pronouncing it, so that's good. But
yeah,
I only said Diker because on the audiobook he said the guy says Diker, and I
yeah.
don't recommend the audiobook anyway. He is not, or at least he wasn't a good narrator for me. So,
I've never
but
heard the audiobook, but I do know that Erickson is on the record as saying that they did not consult him when they made the audiobook.
oh, that's unfortunate.
The first audiobooks, at least, so they do not have the pronunciation that Erickson and Esselmont use on these
Oh,
audiobooks. So
that's
yeah, that's unfortunate. I think if you listen to the audiobooks for some of the later,
mm-hmm.
some of the later stuff, sorry about that.
Oh,
Uh,
that's okay.
then they have after that at a certain point they did consult with Erickson, and so
That's
I,
good.
I can't remember exactly where that started. Eric is here in the chat; he might know, but yeah, that's so right on a reread.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can see that. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Irsi said it's pretty brutal too.
It
Yeah.
is, yeah. There are a lot of tough things that happen in the Malazan series. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it. There's just a
There.
lot of really tough things that happen there.
That's for sure.
So
One thing that really blew me away, and I'm sure this is probably minor. I'm easily amazed,
right,
maybe.
right.
But one of the things that really blew me away in this book was learning the identities of Shadow Throne and Cotillion. I'm like,
Oh yeah,
I did not see that coming.
yeah.
I did
That's a
that.
cool detail. Yeah,
Yeah, that was a cool reveal for me, and I am really liking my read of it overall.
yeah.
Um, Anamander Rake is still one of my favorite
Oh
characters
yeah, he's
of
awesome.
all time.
That's
He's
about as epic as it gets.
Yeah, and I really like Quick Ben, and I'm not sure what I think of. Do you need to take that, Philip?
No, I don't. It's my
Okay.
daughter. I'm trying to tell her to
Okay.
call her mother.
Okay. Yeah. I'm still not sure what to think of Callum so far.
Of who?
Of Corporal Callum.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just I like some aspects of his story, but I'm still not totally sold on him, so we'll see.
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well,
it's go ahead.
yes, no, about his character. I mean, he's one of these characters that I think it's fair to say there are a lot of characters that you're meant to feel a little bit ambiguous about
Yeah.
in series, and that is something that Erickson and both Erickson and Esselmont do really, really well, which is you may at first feel like a certain character is a bad character, is evil, or something like that, but then you get a different side to that character. And what they do really well is they present the complexity of an individual in a way that doesn't allow us to just easily categorize them. So I think with Column, you do have a character who, I mean, he's an assassin, right? That's his job.
Right.
So he's going to have to do some unsavory things in the process of doing that. Yeah, it's but at the same time, he's one of the guys that we sort of feel like rooting for because we're getting their perspective all the time. But it's interesting because the Malazans, even though we're getting their perspective, they're representing a brutal empire that is, aggressively and not just encroaching, but invading other people's places. So it's really kind of complicated, I guess, in that way. It doesn't give us this easy, here are the heroes, so yes, root for them, and here are the villains, so yay, hope that they lose. It's not like that, it's a much complex scenario. So
you're absolutely right. I've found that, and it's the same with the gods. And the gods and the ascendants. I'm really impressed in how deeply they are involved, albeit with ulterior motives, in the Malazan world. Working their schemes behind the scenes and how deeply they're involved. So, and again, it's ambiguous. You don't necessarily feel like the gods and the ascendants are the bad guys. It's very, they have their own stories and their own motives, and so
yeah, well, they're a lot like the Greek gods in that sense.
They are.
If you've read the Iliad or the Odyssey, it's not that the gods are villains or heroes. It's just that they want what they want. They have their own agenda, and they, like most people, don't hesitate to use others that they have the power over to use. So, and unfortunately for us humans, that includes us.
Exactly. Yeah. We end up being playthings and toys that they. That they.
And there's Epic Tales in the chat. Hello, Epic Tales.
Yeah, me too. He's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and he loves characters like that. I do too.
Yeah.
Catch up real quick here. Let's see. Ursi says, I've read to read.
I've yet to read.
Oh, okay. I've yet to read a Neil Gaiman book. Yeah. So many great books. Yeah, there are so many great Neil Gaiman books. So hope you definitely get to that.
I suspect you would enjoy. If you're there still at Ursi, I suspect you would enjoy some Neil Gaiman. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I definitely want to talk about the Dark Tower. Yes, Ursi's been reading the Dark Tower as well. So
cool.
Yeah, she's got some great videos on that.
Nice. How far is Ursi? Do you know?
I think she. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ursi, if you're still here. I think she is. She finished up through the Song of Susanna. I think.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but yeah, and she was. She had a jaw drop with the brutality in Dead House Gates. Yeah, it is really
prologue.
brutal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's some tough stuff. There
Yeah.
really is, and that is I think a thing that comes up sometimes too with books. That oh, she says she's about to start the Dark Tower.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm starting it in a couple of days here as well. Or see, so
Okay.
you and I are right on track together.
Nice, nice.
That's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
and Philip, so you just finished The Wind Through the Keyhole.
yeah. I read it after book four, so I decided to read it chronologically rather
I
than
did too.
in order.
That's exactly how I read it. Yeah, okay, you haven't read Wind Through the Keyhole yet, Ercy. Yeah, great book, and you don't have to read it in order, right? But
No,
yeah,
I
but
think
yeah,
that
that was a good way to do it.
I am glad I did it. I loved the book, and I'll be able to go back to it someday because this is a series I'm going to reread eventually.
Oh yeah, easily. Same with me, and
Yeah.
it's another one like Malazan where I think you'll get more of it, or even more out of it the second time around.
Yeah, and then of course there are these other Stephen King books that people are telling me I should read, like Salem's
Yeah.
Lot, for example, which gets spoiled by book five, Wolves of the Kala.
Yep,
So,
it does.
and
Hmm.
I appreciate that advice from the King fans and the King readers. I think it's great to honestly. I'm reading Dark Tower in the first place because of them and their
Yeah.
recommendations, and people like Mike over at Mike's Book Reviews who are big time King fans. So,
Hmm.
but I just decided that King for me, it's interesting. I don't mind spoilers as much as I think most people do. I'm a
Yeah.
pretty spoiler tolerant person in general. And also, I feel like King spoils his own books all the time. He tells you this character is going to die, and yes, it's really sad, and let's get back to the story now. And who does that? I mean, he does
Right.
it. He can get away with it because there's still so much tension in the story because you're waiting for that thing to happen. And he's good enough, he's brilliant enough of a writer to keep you invested, even though you know what's going to happen. So I don't feel like spoilers are really such a big deal for me personally, but also in particular with King. It's
Hmm.
just okay. I mean, I several times reading Dark Tower, he's for me anyways. I know what's going to happen, and I think he doesn't hide it. It's pretty obvious where this is going.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, for Ursi too. Yeah, she said it's been the same for her, and the character development is amazing. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, this is a great series for character readers.
Oh yeah,
Um
I would say so. Yeah, and
and
coming of age,
coming
that's
of
something.
age.
Certainly, the last two books, I would say, have been very focused on coming of age. So, Wizard and Glass and Wind and
Hmm.
Keyhole. Um, just and you've got these themes that connect all of these books, even though they're the strangest books, and
Hmm.
they're so in some ways very disparate from one another and different from anything else because they're a combination of fantasy and science fiction and western and horror and all just thrown together.
Yeah,
But at the same time, there are these themes that connect them together. So there's a lot in there about coming of age. There's a lot in there about relationships between mothers and sons and
there he
fathers
is.
and sons. And so you can tell that the king has these things in the back of his mind that are definitely a very important part of the series. And just
Absolutely.
a sense of I love the idea. I'm not entirely sure about the whole multiverse thing. I think I get the concept,
Uh-huh.
but it's cool. I think how you get this sense of vastness and the sense of all these different worlds being connected. So it's a
Absolutely.
pretty mind blowing series. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I really like the way it deals with fate or Ka
Hmm.
in this story. And I it was very, so I've read up a lot and studied the Tao Te Ching and Taoist thought and things like that.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of similarities with the way that Stephen King treats Ka,
Yeah.
because Ka is very much one of those things that you can either be a slave to it or you can partner with Ka and, you know, allow the flow to happen, allow Ka to happen in whatever manner it chooses. And so, you know, fate and everything is just wrapped in so deeply to it that I just really loved that perspective as well. You know, just kind of stepping back and going with the flow of life, and whatever happens is going to happen. There's nothing we can do to stop it, but we can choose to experience it in a positive way.
Yeah, I like that. His whole take on the quest group, which he calls a quartet, you know.
Yes.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that, okay, so there's this thing, Ka or fate or what have you, that has thrown us all together. And this sense of being here together, you know, carving meaning out of all of this is very prominent, I think, in the story. And you have characters who are all in one way or another damaged people who are helping each other on this quest.
Exactly.
And so it's very much a like the quest for the Grail. It's a quest for meaning, you know.
Yeah.
So
I can definitely see that for sure.
Yeah.
And the magic in the Dark Tower is very intricately connected to Ka as well. It's very much part of Ka. Even the darker magics are still part of Ka. So yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, Fina likes the genre hopping. Well, you'll love the Dark Tower then, Fina, because he goes all over the place with genres. You've got sci-fi, you've got fantasy, you've got portal fantasy, Western.
Yeah, it's just so weird and bizarre. I love it. It's not like anything else.
It isn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Iowa J says, I read The Stand 30 years ago, but haven't read anything else by King.
Yeah, I'd like to read The Stand after I finish Dark Tower.
Yeah, The Stand is still on my list. I did actually start it, but I wasn't feeling it at the time, so I put it down, and I'm definitely going to read it again at some point. But it's such a large and it's a very dense read, at least from what little I read of it so far. So it's probably going to take me a while.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty thick book. Yeah.
Character
you mentioned Taoism, which I find very interesting as well. One other writer that springs to my mind when you say Taoism is Ursula Le Guin.
Yes,
big time in the Wizard of Earthsea. That is very much at the heart of that series. Especially, it's very easy to see it in the very first book, Wizard of Earthsea, but it's something that continues in the rest of the series as well. Yeah.
That's good to know. I read Wizard of Earthsea many years ago, and I had not really encountered Taoism at that time.
Okay.
I mean, I knew of it, but it wasn't something that I kind of immersed myself in Taoist thought at that time. So I do plan to eventually reread Wizard of Earthsea and then read the rest of the series. I have that big fancy collector's omnibus of all of the Earthsea books, so I plan to get to that eventually. And I do have Ursula Le Guin's book on the Tao, the translation that she did.
Oh, cool.
Of the Tao. So I have that. I have yet to read it, but it's on my list. And
I think this time when you read Wizard of Earthsea, you'll see the Taoism. It's right. There's an epigraph at the beginning, and you'll say, "Oh, yeah, that's Taoism right there."
Yeah.
And from beginning to end, it's really central to the story. And that's part of, to me, what makes it such a beautiful. It's like reading a really wonderful folk tale almost. I mean, I think if you go into reading Wizard of Earthsea expecting a modern fantasy with lots of character development and all that, you won't be happy necessarily.
I do remember that about it. Yeah, it's very different on that respect.
Yeah, I mean, she's more interested in theme than character, clearly. I think especially in a Wizard of Earthsea, which is a very slim book. It's very bare. It's very folktale like.
Yeah.
But she's obviously a very skilled writer. Her prose is
Oh, yeah.
brilliant. She's on that list for me of just best prose in the genre. And I think she's able to construct a world with very minimal details. But her concern in there wasn't, necessarily deep character development. It's really more about the themes she's exploring, which are very much related to Taoism. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been, the last few years, I'm not really religious anymore by any means. I
Uh-huh.
don't subscribe to any of that, but the philosophies of Taoism and Buddhism and things like that really resonate with me.
Yeah, me too.
The core philosophies themselves, and I recently what kind of got me into it was Wayne Dyer's book, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life,
Oh
which,
yeah, yeah. He's the guy that I used to occasionally, when I had television, would see on PBS. Right? He's the one.
yeah, he did a lot of
Yeah.
PBS specials, and he was a very ardent follower of Taoism, or Taoist philosophy in any case.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
his book, the book I mentioned, is he took a year-long sabbatical and studied the Tao, and
Okay.
then the Tao Te Ching, and then he wrote commentary for each verse of the Tao Te Ching. So he has a translation of it on one page, and then he has a couple of pages of his thoughts on the particular passage that he
Okay.
read, and it was just mind blowing for me. I really resonated with it, and the Taoist approach to life. So
Yeah.
that was what kind of kickstarted it for me, and then I started reading heavily into Alan Watts,
Oh yeah,
and
Alan Watts. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, two of my favorite uh, thought leaders, really.
Yeah, and both of them borrow heavily from Eastern philosophies.
They
Uh,
do. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. What was it that he used to always say on PBS? Something about, I, I can't remember his slogan, but he would say it all the time. It was like, imagine you're what you want and then go for it. But he had a way of
Uh-huh.
saying it. Do you remember what it was, Chaz?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I know exactly what you're talking about, but the
It's like
way
with
he put it,
Joseph Campbell's "Follow Your Bliss," right? And he had
yeah, exactly.
and this guy Wayne Dwyer had this thing he would always say, and it was something like, you know, it's something to the effect of, you have to envision what you want in order to make it happen. But that's a very
Right.
awkward way of saying it. He had a really cool slogan for that.
He
But
did, and it escapes me right now, but
yeah,
yeah, I remember that distinctly from a lot of the specials, and I've read several other of his books, and it's just that is a core principle of his life and experience.
yeah, I
In
might be
fact, if
looking him
you he made a movie called The Shift
up. Okay, I
a
didn't
few
know that.
years back, and he he played himself, and it was kind of like an interview style where they were at a retreat and they were interviewing Wayne Dyer and stuff like that. But it's just a beautiful video. If you ever get to see it, it's really great.
Okay, huh?
Um, there's a deep connection underlying many world religions. See Huxley's perennial philosophy, for example. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that, Iowa J. That's great. I have not read Huxley. I have wanted to, but I have not read Huxley yet. And the dialogues between Thomas Merton and Eastern religions. Okay,
Uh, yeah.
I've heard of Thomas Merton. I really haven't read that, but um, yeah, just so much great stuff there. You looking up that quote?
I'm trying to find the quote,
Yeah,
but I'm not finding it very easily. That's okay. But
yeah,
yeah, he was an interesting guy. I didn't realize he had passed away in 2015.
yeah. That was really sad. A big loss. Um, he lived such an amazing life, though, and I think that's he. I'm sure he died happy.
I would think so, based on
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Same
there's
with Ram Dass, and now we recently lost Thich Nhat Hanh, and
yes, Thich Nhat Hanh is somebody who I have read and really just have immense respect for.
oh, so do I. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
his book. I think I'm not an expert by any means, but I'm an admirer of Buddhism, and
I am too.
he wrote the book that for me was the single best explanation of philosophical Buddhism, which is the heart of the Buddha's teaching. And
Oh, I've had that on my list to read. I've not read that one yet.
yeah, that is such a great read. I can't tell you how wonderful and transformative that read was for me, and how peaceful I felt while reading it, and how it has definitely influenced my mindset when I'm out in the world. Like if I'm playing tennis and I'm getting really frustrated at myself, I remember the heart of the Buddha's teaching, and I
That's
sort of,
excellent.
yeah, it's really cool because you can sort of step outside yourself and sort of look at yourself. Now, why am I feeling like this? Why am I losing it right now and wanting to smash my racket?
Oh,
And
that's excellent.
it helps you to just be a better person. It helps
Mm-hmm.
you to have healthier relationships. It helps you to move in the world in a way that is you leave a lot more positivity behind you, I think. So I highly recommend it for anyone interested in that topic. Is The Heart of the Buddhist Teaching by Thich Nhat Hanh, who unfortunately, yes, did pass away just a few weeks ago, I think. Yeah.
Right.
But he was in his
Yeah.
90s, I think. So,
Yeah, and
that's
he had suffered I forget if it was a hemorrhage or a stroke. It was one of those about 5 years back or so. And
yeah.
so yeah, he had a pretty life-altering uh health episode that so I was not surprised to see him pass, but I was I was sad and yet happy, for the legacy he's left behind, really.
Yeah, that's a person who's left behind a lot of good influence in the world. So,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the best you can do with your life, I think, is to do just that. Leave a lot of good vibes behind. So,
Absolutely. I agree. Stephen Batchelor is another one. I don't know if you read Stephen Batchelor. He has a book
no,
called Buddhism Without Belief. That's another really great book.
okay,
That I highly recommend. I listen to most of my nonfiction on audio
okay,
just because I have a hard time concentrating on nonfiction for some reason if I sit down to read the physical book.
yeah,
So I do a lot of it on audio, but there's a few books that I have physically. Eckhart Tolle's books, The Power of Now and
oh
A
yeah, I'm
New
familiar
Earth,
with those. Yeah, yeah,
and so yeah. Uh, in fact, the reason for that is Eckhart Tolle is one of those that I cannot listen to because
uh huh.
he always puts me to sleep. His voice is so calming that I never can listen to a lecture of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
his.
I know.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I've
I
heard him
just
on YouTube. Yeah, and he has a funny laugh as well.
he does,
That
yeah. He's
yeah,
great. So such a really neat, quirky character, and
he's a quirky fellow. Yeah, when I first heard his laugh, I was like, "Is he sneezing? What is that?"
yeah, yeah, it's great.
But very
Yeah, but
calming, very calming. Yeah.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
so yeah,
nice,
I love
nice.
listening to thinkers like that. And maybe do you think it's a thing, Chaz, that a lot of us fantasy readers are also people who are attracted to reading up on things like that?
I think so. Yeah, I think people who read regularly tend to be,
Hmm.
especially reading in fantasy, tend to be more open-minded, more open to new experiences and new thoughts, new ideas. Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
Huh. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an
Yeah,
interesting thought. Yeah, yeah.
because there's so much the possibilities are endless, I think, for those of us who who read a lot and read that type of fiction, especially. So,
Yeah, exactly. Well said. Yeah. So if you're open to experiencing other worlds, yeah, I think that you're more likely to be open to experiencing other ways of thinking.
yeah. And that's one thing that I really loved about Joseph Campbell, especially The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Just drove
Yeah,
home that point beautifully. I think that uh, that every experience is the same at its core. We may have different experiences and in different aspects of quote unquote the hero's journey,
right.
but it all comes back down to the core of being human.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
He's another writer that there's been a reaction against Joseph Campbell in a lot of circles, where I mean, it's obviously a lot of what he was doing was kind of reductive,
right.
reducing,
Mm-hmm.
cherry picking from different narratives in order to fit this pattern of the hero's journey and all of that. And he had a big influence. So usually when somebody has a big influence, there's going to be a reaction. But I have
Yeah,
to say that he is one of the people who's responsible for lighting a fire in my young mind and creating this just passion for storytelling and mythology. And I'll never ever forget that, because I feel like that is something that it became a very important thing in my life, at a time when
absolutely.
I was kind of just sort of, I grew up in a very religious household, and
Same
I'm
here.
the son of a minister, actually, who's the son of a minister, because we have ministers going through, 3 generations back before me.
Yeah,
I was at a time when I was sort of trying to figure out things, and just I came across Joseph Campbell when I was probably around 17 or 18 years old, and I really appreciate even now how he restored a sense of that I could feel like there's something sacred to life without
mm-hmm.
necessarily believing the doctrine that I grew up with. Uh,
Exactly.
so I really appreciated that about him, and yeah, I recognize that a lot of what he was doing, it was reductive, but it was a special thing for me at that particular, and it was an important age as well, but he gave me that love for mythology, that
Mm-hmm.
again I think related to my love for fantasy as well. The two things do have a lot of things in common.
They do.
Perform
Yeah.
some of the same functions, I think, for people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, Ursi said definitely made her more curious about the world and different races.
Yep.
Uh, diving into the lore of different races. Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense to apply that to a lot. Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. A lot of what we read really speaks to our human experience, I think,
Yep.
and different philosophies and cultures. That's what makes humanity so beautiful. I couldn't have said it better. See, that's fantastic
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
terrifying. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Humanity is both beautiful and terrifying at the same time, isn't it? It's that
Yeah. Indeed. But yeah, so
the yin and the yang, the good and the bad. It's all part of the flow of experience, really. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have a couple good comments from Iowa J as well here, and
Yes. As a
yeah,
pastor
I think that's a
interested in that
great,
community.
great sentiment. Great sentiment. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
is.
agree. It is a good bridge. That's a good way to put it, a bridge builder between. Yeah, that's excellent.
Yep. And Eric puts it really well too. Yeah,
Fantasy can deal with the relationship between human and the divine without reading like a religious treatise. Yep, absolutely.
precisely. That's kind of part of the
Use from the
point
molds.
that Stephen Donaldson makes in the essays that I made a video about a little while ago.
Yes.
His essays on epic fantasy, where he delves into this notion that epic fantasy can be the literature of reintegration, and the idea that we can feel a sense of connection to the world around us, and we can feel empowered, that we can feel that we matter, and through that connection. And that's a really cool thing. Even in fantasy
It
that
is.
explores alienation, I think that's an important thing too. Because we call it grimdark or whatever, and there is a fair amount of exploration of alienation, which seems to be, it's not exclusive to the modern condition, but it seems
Right.
that in modern times we are more focused on alienation than in perhaps previous eras. But fantasy gives sort of I guess, a sort of unfashionable insistence that no, actually, we can live in the world and we can carve out meaning from it, and we
Yes.
can find that in fellowship with our fellow creatures. So I think it's just giving you that sense of uh, of of the sublime, really, and that's a very important thing. That's kind of why we tell stories, I think.
I think so
So
too.
yeah.
Yeah, I need to check out some of his essays because I really enjoyed that video that you did,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
speaking to some of the themes and the talking points that he brought up. So I
Yeah.
think I definitely want to read some of those because they sound like they would be something that would fit my interests for sure.
Oh, I think you would love them. And also, Tolkien's essay on fairy stories is a classic that says
Yes.
some similar things. And
Hmm.
Ursula Le Guin, again, her essay from Elfland to Poughkeepsie is more focused on prose, but she also says some really cool things about fantasy in there too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have not even heard of that one. I've heard of Tolkien's essay. I've not read either of these, but yeah, that'll be yeah, I've got some reading material, I think.
Yeah. Cool. It's
Jonathan's here with us. Welcome,
nice.
Jonathan. Yeah.
We got a reunion happening over there in Iowa.
Yeah, we sure do.
Nice.
Uh, yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot that can be learned, a lot of benefits from reading fantasy, well, and speculative fiction in general, whatever it might be, whether it's science fiction, fantasy, um, horror, even fits into that category. And I've enjoyed some good horror tales as well.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, and I think I think the one of the core focuses of horror is fear in a lot of ways. It's kind of speaking
Yeah.
to that fear that the fear that we have of the unknown
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
you know
that's kind of
the fear
related
of loss
to.
of life and
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's related very much to what Ursi and others were talking about before in regard to Malazan and all the really tough stuff that happens.
yes.
So, why do we write stories in which awful things happen? And why do we read stories that scare us? Right? Why do we do
Hmm.
that? What just to look behind the layers a little bit and see, well, what's going on when we're engaging with these kinds of things. And I think that a lot of these authors have given some really fantastic answers to these questions.
Hmm.
We need stories that engage with the stuff that we are dealing with in the real world. And
Hmm.
we live in a world that has suffering, and we live in a world that has pain, and we live in a world that I think requires us to wrestle with these things. And if literature, and I'm not saying every story needs to confront horrible things that happen, but that is one of the important functions of literature, isn't it? Is
It
to
is.
confront these, help us to wrestle with them, and to, in an environment that's safe. And fantasy is great for that because you get that psychic distance, right?
Yeah,
You're not.
absolutely. And I think you
It's
hit it
easier
right
to
on the
talk.
nose.
Yeah, it's easier to talk about, um, ethnic conflict in a fantasy setting than it is to talk about, what's going on now in, in Ukraine, or what's been going
Hmm.
on in other parts of the world where there's, obviously in the real world there are lives at stake and that sort of thing. But I think it's
Yeah.
important for us to be able uh, to wrestle with these things in a safer place, if you will, in a made up world.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you, Philip. That is one of the beauties of fantasy in particular, but also, spec fic in general. I think
Yeah,
lends well to the escapism that we need to be able to really deal with those the core issues that resonate with us. So you hit
yeah,
it right on the money, and I think Terry Pratchett is really good at that because
uh-huh.
he deals with so many different subjects and themes that it's very evergreen because
Yeah,
it's stuff that we deal with on a daily basis in our modern world,
yeah,
and yet it's in a fantasy setting. So it allows us to kind of grapple with those and even laugh at them at some point,
yeah.
because
We need to do
he
that.
he
Yeah,
he's got that cheeky humor in there, and I think that's important too, because if we can't allow ourselves to laugh, we just can get so down in the doldrums about it. So, but yeah,
yeah,
Terry Pratchett's great for that in my experience.
yeah. There's something important about laughter, and
Hmm.
there's also something very important and cathartic about crying with,
There
in
is.
grief, but also in joy. And I think we can agree that a lot of our favorite books are the ones that make us. I have had moments reading Malazan where I'm not sure if I'm laughing or crying. I'm doing both
Yeah,
simultaneously.
I've had moments like that with Malazan too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so it's just powerful and important and cathartic. And that's what keeps bringing us back to all these amazing stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Including a new and upcoming author named Philip Chase, if I might
Oh,
add. uh,
yeah.
I was let's see. Okay, Fina has to go. Thanks for joining us,
Oh,
Fina. So
thanks for
good to
being here,
have you.
Tina. Yeah.
I'd be curious. I know you can't give many details, but I'd be curious to hear how your journey's going so far. I know. Last I heard, your agent was ready to send it off to shop it to different publishers. How's that going?
Yeah. So that hasn't actually started yet. We're still preparing.
Okay.
And I've got the first two books are very much ready. The third book is written, but I need to give it a look over, and then I would like AP to look at it as well, as he did with the
Hmm.
first two books. And then I'll edit it again. And then I feel like that one will be in really good shape, I hope. But as far as the agent and the pitch goes, my agent gave me a few things to do, some homework, and I've been doing
Yeah.
that. Part of that involves, I don't want to give too many details at this point. At
Sure.
some point, perhaps I will, especially if it goes well. And it is going well. It's going actually really well so far. But he asked me if I could possibly get some author endorsements. So asking some published authors if they would be willing to look at the book and write a blurb, like the kind you'd see on the back of a published book and that sort of thing.
Right.
So I've been in the process of doing that. And I'll just say that it's going really well
Hmm.
so far. And yeah, I'm really excited and a little nervous and all of that. But I feel like I've done about as much as I can do to bring these books out into the world, and hopefully it'll happen. I think my agent is feeling pretty good at this point, and uh, so we'll see what happens. He's been very supportive, and I really appreciate that.
Well, that's very exciting. And you've got a lot of other people that are very excited. Irisi's really excited about your books.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm curious to see how Fantasy Professor writes fantasy as well. Uh,
yeah.
oh, here's a good question. Which is more stressful, defending your doctoral thesis or pitching your book?
Definitely pitching my book. So I would say for my dissertation, I took 5 years total to finish my PhD, and I think 2 of those years, more or less, were dissertation writing.
Hmm.
And I was nervous defending it, but it was more fun, honestly. I had a good time writing my dissertation. In this case, I've been putting 18 years, and not just 2, but 18 years into this trilogy. So I've really invested a lot of myself
Wow.
into these books. And it's not
Yes,
like
you have.
18 years of constant writing, by the way. It's been on and off, mostly in the summers. So
Hmm.
because I teach and I have to, I have to do right by my students, so I can't be indulging in my writing all the time. But I put a lot into them for sure. And I think any writer will tell you that they leave some of themselves in their writing. With the academic writing, with the dissertation, you're a little more formal. You're a little bit distanced from the material.
Hmm.
Whereas I think creative writing, there's part of you in it, in some way or
Yeah.
other.
Yeah,
So
I've heard it compared to another child. It's
yeah,
your
I
baby. It's
mean,
something that Hmm.
yeah, in a way, you're kind of bearing your soul,
Hmm.
uh, in a sense, I guess, to people with your stories.
I
So I'm
agree.
probably more nervous about that. But that said, I put in a lot of time, and I feel very good about the stories, especially having had people like my agent and AP
Hmm.
looking at them. And so hopefully they're in really good shape, and an editor at a publishing house will agree. And I anticipate even then that the editor will have things that she or he or they or whatever will want me to change.
Hmm.
I would anticipate that working with an editor would entail further revisions.
Hmm.
It's not. I seriously doubt it would be a case of, wow, this is a perfect book, let's just publish it right now. I don't
Yeah.
think it works that way. So yeah,
Right.
be
Probably
really,
not.
yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah, you got a lot more love coming in here. Can't wait to see what you're doing.
Yeah, we shall see. Yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. So
Yeah, and I'm very excited to see what you've come up with. I'm assuming even though you pretty much got the trilogy completed,
yeah, yeah.
I'm assuming you'll probably still release it on a timetable, like once a year or something like that,
I
or
would guess, I think that would be more up to the publisher than me.
right,
But unless it ends up being self-publishing, so
right,
then I
hmm,
could look at different options. So that's
sure,
the advantage of self-publishing, of course, is you have more creative freedom and control.
yeah,
So
and you get more of the royalties.
yep, that too. Of course,
Yeah, there's a
your
lot more
ability,
footwork to do.
exactly. Yeah, you have to do more of the footwork and the marketing and all of that.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are pros and cons for sure, and it's great that we have different options these days. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I feel good about the stories, and we'll see. I actually have all 3 books written. I have even a standalone sequel written as well. Um, so there is a 4th book already written.
Oh, wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. So it's definitely a world that I want to stay in for a while, I think.
Uh-huh.
So, but we'll see.
Well,
First, we gotta get the first book published before anything else, I guess. So
right. Well, I know a lot can happen, but I tell you what, I have very positive hopes for you that that it will be released and be very successful.
yeah,
Um,
we'll see. We'll see. I
yeah,
mean, we'll see what people make of it. I'm the worst person probably in the world to judge how people are gonna like it, because I like it because it came from me, right? So
right,
I'm
exactly.
completely biased. So I wrote the story that I wanted to write, um, and it is the kind of story that I would like to read as well. And hopefully, other people share that feeling.
Yeah, and that's really important, isn't it? It has to be it. Uh, if nothing else happens, it has to be the story that you want to write,
I think so.
and to read. You have to be equally happy doing both if you're going to put it out there into the ether. And
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that way. I feel like to write something, you need to have some passion for it. And I don't understand when I hear about famous writers, and he's been pretty open about it, so I think it's okay to say, like James Patterson, for example. He's not a fantasy writer. He writes what thrillers and stuff, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Very famous writer and very successful.
Yeah.
Um, but I think what he does these days is he has people, essentially, he gives an outline to
Mm-hmm.
as a group of people working for him. He gives them an outline, and he has them write the book.
Right.
And then he'll edit what they've done, and then his name goes on the book. Their name doesn't appear anywhere. And
Right.
so I don't get that. I mean, I guess I do get it because it's a way to churn out more books. But
Sure.
it just seems like a kind of a little soulless to me in a way.
It
The
it
factory
does.
system of writing, just I guess people must still be. I haven't read his books, but it just seems so foreign an idea to me that for me, writing is a passion. It's a thing that you do because you love it. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to get paid for it too, but I can't imagine writing a compelling story in that way of that factory kind of approach to it.
Yeah, I had heard that about him too, and yes, I can't imagine
Yeah,
doing that either. It just if if I were to take that approach, I don't know as the money would be worth it because it's not really mine, totally. So
yeah, yeah. No,
and I'm sure he does pay. I'm sure he pays the writers that do it well. I'm sure he takes care of
yeah,
them.
yeah. I'm sure they wouldn't be doing it if they weren't getting something out of it. So,
Yeah.
but just feels a little weird to me that, and I certainly wouldn't want to write for somebody else and then have them stick their name. And people do it. There are all kinds of uh, ghost writers and that sort of thing out there, and it's a way of making a living, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But it just feels a little, I don't know, a little fake in a way, for a
Yeah.
famous person to stick their name on a book that they didn't really do any work for at all, just
Yeah.
to sell the book. It just seems, again, it just seems kind of soulless to me. But
I'm with you there. Same.
yeah.
Do you have a particular author that has really influenced your style? I'm sure you're influenced by a lot of different authors. I think any author is, but is there one in particular that has really influenced your style and approach to writing?
Well, I've talked a lot of times about how Tolkien was the writer who ignited my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure that there's, even in ways that I don't even realize, some Tolkien influence. And Ursula Le Guin was a very important writer for me at a younger age as well. So I consider her a formative writer as well. So those would be kind of like very formative ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read a lot of other authors, so it's almost impossible to disentangle all these different influences. And it's interesting because I have, my tastes have changed over time. I now consider the Malazan series to be my favorite of all time, displacing
Mm-hmm.
even Lord of the Rings, which was
Yeah.
such an important influence for me. And I would say, in terms of influence, I hadn't read Malazan before writing the first two books, but the third book I had read Malazan. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably fair to say that the third book is the most Malazan-like of the three.
Okay. Yeah.
But again, without me even, I would never even dare to consciously imitate a writer like Steven Erikson,
Of
because
course.
I can't do what he does.
Right.
Um,
I don't think most can. He's got
yeah,
such a unique
yeah,
style, and there's a very unique partnership between him and Ian that I don't think can really be emulated.
right, right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I'm guessing this is regarding Tolkien. No wonder he's the top
Oh
selling
no,
author
that's Patterson. He's talking about James
Oh,
Patterson.
Patterson. Oh, okay, got it. Yep. Okay. Okay, yeah.
Because we were having that conversation about how and I hope that's accurate. I think he actually, where I heard that was from him. So I hope I'm not misrepresenting him at all in
That
saying.
was what I had heard as well, Philip.
Okay.
So if you're misrepresenting it, then I think it's been misrepresented to us.
Yeah. Well, and I
But
think I heard it from him. And so,
yeah,
and he's not the only one. There are other very well-known writers who do the same thing.
okay, interesting.
Yeah. So for what it's worth, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, if you're way back in the 18th century, Samuel Johnson said, "No one but a blockhead ever wrote for anything but money." So, I think that if your goal is to make money, then James Patterson is absolutely great. More power to him, because he's probably doing quite well, I would imagine. So
Probably so. Yeah. There's I think probably the only other author that is as prolific as he is. Um, I mean, I know Brandon Sanderson is pretty prolific, but I
yeah.
think the most prolific author living that I know is Stephen King. I mean, he's written,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
oh my goodness, 60 plus books.
Yeah.
Just yeah.
I don't know
So
how you do that. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't either. Yeah, it's quite an interesting. It would be interesting to get a window into just how he does it. I had seen an interview with him and George R. R. Martin. George R. R. Martin asked him, how the heck do you write so quickly?
I guess he would want to know, right?
Yeah, he would want to know. He
Yeah.
needs the inside scoop for sure. But
Yeah.
and I don't know if Stephen King goes into it in his book on writing. Maybe he
I'm going to read
does.
that book. I actually have a copy of it, and I'm going to read that book. Yeah.
I want to read it too. Yeah, that one, and there's another one. Terry Brooks wrote one as well
Oh,
called "Sometimes the Magic Works."
okay. Good title.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I want to read that one as well because I write myself as well, and I'm always wanting to get new insights into the writing process. So
Yeah.
still
I
waiting on the Winds of Winter. Yep.
Yeah, we all are. We all are.
Yep.
But I consider John Gardner's books on writing to be some of the very best.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, John Gardner, who's the author of Grendel, and other things.
Oh,
So,
okay. Yeah.
a scholar as well, but he wrote some really great books. They're for me the best books for advice on writing. But I want to read Stephen King's book as well on writing. I think it's what it's called, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's there's so much good material out there, and I think the ones that have had the most success, like Stephen King, are good ones to learn from.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, he hasn't done too badly for himself.
No, he certainly hasn't.
And I for years I didn't read Stephen King because I didn't know how many books he had written, but I knew that he was immensely popular and prolific, and so I just had the assumption that there was no way it could be very good, which I'm pleased to say I was very wrong about. The Dark Tower is brilliant. It's really good stuff. There's a lot of great things to say about Dark Tower.
Absolutely.
So prolific doesn't necessarily equal bad, I guess.
Right. It sure doesn't.
Yeah.
Tom Clancy still has books under his name that are written by other authors. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I don't get that, but I guess that's how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think? What do you think about pen names, Philip? Are you going to publish under your own name, or did you go a pen name route, or are you kind of? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think I will have a kind of pen name. Kind of. I mean, you'll still see my name there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll probably talk about that at some point.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah, that's a good question. I can't answer it exactly with specifics yet, but you might see a slightly different version of my name. That's
okay.
Yeah, on the book covers. We'll see. But yeah.
All right. Well, good to know. That's a nice little way to wet our whistle
Yeah,
for
sorry, I would
what's coming.
love to
Oh
tell
no,
you what it is.
that's fine. I know I appreciate the fact that there's some things when you're in the middle of the process that you just can't talk about, especially when there's so much positive forthcoming. You don't want to share too much, and I
Yeah,
totally respect that. So
yeah. There are some things you can't talk about until they're done and dusted. Yeah, Eric is a, Eric is a piano.
Dr. Phillips, I like that, Eric. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, there might be a few interesting suggestions now for
Yeah.
people. So, yeah, you'll see. But yeah, there are certain things that I'd love actually to say more about, but
Uh-huh.
they're not really quite settled yet. So you don't want to say anything in case it doesn't happen the way you think it's going to happen. So, um,
Exactly.
but
Yeah,
I will say that.
oh,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. No, I will say that the process is going really, really well, as well as I could have hoped at this point. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah,
Well, it couldn't happen to a greater guy. I tell you what, I'm so excited to see what the future holds for your writing. That's really exciting. And if you become really successful with it, which I have no doubt you will, that might be a nice little nest egg for you too, because I know with education and so many
oh
things
yeah,
are changing, and I watched your talk with Alan, and
mhm, yeah,
it's just really disheartening to see the step away from the important works and discussions of those works and banning books and the like. It's just
yeah. I don't know what's happening.
and kind of killing the humanities altogether. It's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Well, I mean, it could be signs of the collapse of the empire. You know.
Yeah, that I watched another video that a discussion video that had Alan in the group, and he actually referred to it as that. I think he kind of
Yeah.
the collapse of the empire as we know it. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because you do tend to see this kind of thing at the tail end of particular civilizations. Where
Hmm.
I'm not saying I know what's going to happen, and it could
Right.
take a while to unfold, but you often do see people becoming more dogmatic and
Hmm.
more vitriolic in their fear of outsiders, and you see often a kind of politics of control
Hmm.
as this sense of things sort of spiraling outward takes over. So I feel like we're seeing more and more of that kind of thing in our politics and in our society. Certainly, I think a lot of us have the feeling that there's less listening going on than there used to
Yes.
be, and a lot more shouting. So
I like the way you put that. Yeah, that's right
yeah,
on the nose.
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I hope we can. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an exact, like slide downhill. We could have
Yeah.
moments when we're able to overcome this partisanship that has seemingly taken over the minds of a lot of people. So hopefully we start hearing each other, and that's why I believe that some of these books we've been talking about, Malazan is a great example of
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
series that is pleading with people to look at other human beings in their fullness
Hmm.
and not categorize them and not assume things based on labels about them.
Hmm.
So I really believe it's extremely important, and Malazan is it's asking us to be empathetic, to be compassionate, and that involves listening. So
Hmm.
we'll see what happens. But
Yeah, I think that is really important, Philip. Just like you said, yeah, listening is needs to be the foundation of a healthy society,
yep,
and 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 respecting what each person brings to the table. And you brought up Malazan, and I was reminded of Mappo and Acarium,
Yeah.
because two totally different perspectives, and I won't give too many spoilers here, but Mappo is basically assigned to be a watchdog for Acarium,
Yep.
but instead he develops such a deep friendship with him
Yeah.
that when it comes to the end, where he's supposed to take matters into his own hands,
Yeah.
he doesn't, because he cares too much about the person that he's known Acarium to be.
Yeah.
And I love their relationship. I think it's such a great friendship, and it speaks a lot to what we need to have
Yeah.
with every
I agree.
person that we come in contact with.
Yeah, it's a great example. And speaking of great friendships, Chaz, thank you so much for inviting me onto your channel and having this really fun conversation. I've enjoyed myself thoroughly. It's been a lot of fun.
I have too, Philip.
I didn't know where we were going to go necessarily with this conversation, but I'm so happy with where we went. It's been a really fun almost 2 hours here. So, yeah.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, and I we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Potency of doing nothing in the fountain. Oh, I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's really good.
A lot of
But
lessons there.
yeah, a lot of lessons. But yeah, Philip, this has been amazing. Anybody who's watching, and especially if you catch it on the rewatch, if you don't subscribe to Philip, please do. He's just a phenomenal human being, and a wonderful mind. And I just hope you'll check out his channel. And if you already do, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Philip's just one of my favorite booktubers that I've encountered. And I hopefully we can do this again, Philip. I look forward to talking with you more, and hopefully we can, once you're done with the Dark Tower, we can come
Yeah.
back for another
Palaver.
another palaver. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And see, I've got my Dark
Nice.
Tower shirt here,
Nice. Very nice.
because I
Yeah.
knew we'd be talking about Dark Tower. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time, sir. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
And
the honor and pleasure are all mine, Chaz. It's really, like I said before, this is all about getting together with friends and
yeah,
talking about the stories we love and growing from all of that. So I really appreciate what you do. And thank you for being just a beautiful person and a wonderful part of our community.
well, thank you, Philip, and the same to you. And everybody watching, make sure you are reading more books. This has been Chaz and Friends signing off.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.